The fire was dying, and she knew it before she opened her eyes. She knew it the way a mother knows, from the silence where the crackle should have been, from the cold creeping up the blanket toward her children's faces. She pressed her hand to her youngest boy's forehead in the dark, leaned down to listen for his breathing, and there it was, her own breath, curling into a pale ribbon of mist. Not outside in the storm, here, inside the walls of her own home. And in that instant, she understood the truth that every frontier family learned sooner or later, usually too late. That out here, the cold does not come roaring. It does not knock. It waits. Patient, silent, endlessly patient, sitting just beyond the coals like something alive, waiting for the fire to die. 40 degrees below zero, leaning its full weight against cabin walls no thicker than a few boards of pine. The wind finding every crack, whispering through the chinking like it was searching for the sleeping. And the only thing standing between a living family and a frozen one was a fading bed of coals that had to be kept exactly, perfectly right. One badly managed fire, one careless hour. That was the entire distance between warmth and death. And here's the detail that has haunted me since I first found it buried in the old settlement records. On the very same night, beneath the very same killing sky, two families could face this cold not 10 miles apart, not 5, but 2. 2 miles. And when the sun finally rose, one family would be gathered close around a living fire, alive, while the other would be found exactly where the cold had left them, still, silent, frozen in their beds, having burned through every last log they owned. Same storm, same wilderness, same tools. One lived, one did not. And the difference was not luck. It was not thicker walls or a taller woodpile. It was something they knew. A handful of secrets, passed down and then forgotten, that decided who saw the spring. So how did a frontier family hold life-saving heat for 12 unbroken hours with no electricity, no furnace, nothing but fire and knowledge? How did they build insulation warmer than anything sold in the cities, out of what the forest simply gave away? And when the flames finally went out at 3 a.m, the children already shivering, the clock already running, what did they do? I'm Sam, and this is Wild America. Stay close, because before this is over, you'll know exactly what saved the one family, and what the other one, just 2 miles away, never learned in time. 2 miles from that dying fire, in another cabin against the same black cold, Thomas Hale rose from his chair and laid the 10th log onto the flames. The fire had been burning for 6 hours, steady and orange, and he knew, not hoped, knew, that it would burn for 6 more. There was nothing lucky about that certainty. His wife slept, his children slept, and the reason they were safe came down to a single truth the frontier taught the ones who survived. This isn't luck. This is engineering. Because Hale's fireplace was not simply a hole in the wall where wood was burned. It was a machine built of stone. The firebox was cut deep, its side walls angled to catch the heat and throw it back into the room instead of letting it climb uselessly up the chimney. And the back wall leaned slightly forward, pushing warmth out toward the sleeping bodies who needed it. And the stone itself was doing something quietly miraculous. All day those heavy blocks had been drinking in the fire's heat, storing it deep in their mass like a battery being charged. And now, through the long night, they would give it back slowly, hour after hour, radiating warmth long after the flames burned low. But a stone machine is only as good as what you feed it, and Hale had spent months feeding this one. The wood by his hearth was oak and hickory, dense hardwoods that burn hot and slow, every piece cut and split half a year earlier and left to season until the moisture was gone. He could tell good firewood by hand alone. The seasoned logs were lighter than they looked, cracked at the ends. and when you knocked two together, they rang with a clean, hollow knock instead of a dull, wet thud. Green wood would only smoke and cheat you of heat on the night you needed it most. And then there was the real secret, the one that separated the families who woke warm from the families who woke never. A technique they called banking the fire. Late at night, Hale would load the firebox with his largest logs, close down the airflow, and rake a blanket of ash over the glowing coals, smothering the burn down to a slow smolder that could hold live embers for 8, even 10 hours untended. And here's the part that stays with me. In the deepest hour of that night, Thomas Hale would wake, not because he was cold, but because something in him stirred on its own. An inner clock, the quiet instinct of a man whose blood had learned to keep the fire. It was a rhythm passed through generations, a knowing that an entire modern world has since forgotten how to feel. But here is what Hale understood that so many others didn't. A perfect fire, burning flawlessly for 12 hours, is still worthless, utterly worthless, if the heat it makes simply leaks out through the walls into the night. And it was there, in the walls themselves, that the frontier's true genius was hiding. Sarah Hale laid her open palm flat against the inside wall of the cabin, the way she did every night before sleep, and felt for the cold. Outside, the thermometer had fallen to 30 below, a cold that could kill a grown man in under an hour. And yet the wall beneath her hand was barely cool to the touch. Just cool. That was not an accident, and it was not magic, though it might as well have been. Hidden inside that wall was a piece of engineering so quietly brilliant it rivaled anything sold in the great cities of the East. Built entirely out of things the forest gave away for free. Because the Hale cabin did not have one wall. It had two. An outer wall of logs to face the storm, an inner wall to hold the warmth, and between them a cavity 6 to 8 inches deep, waiting to be filled. And what they filled it with is the part that makes people lean in and ask, wait, that actually worked? Moss. Dried sphagnum moss, packed tight by the handful. A humble bog plant that holds thousands of tiny pockets of trapped air and carries a natural resistance to rot. Mixed in went animal hair saved from butchering, fur from the trap line, even down feathers pulled from waterfowl. The frontier's own puffer jacket, a full century before anyone would call it that. Every gap between the logs was then sealed with chinking, a stiff paste of clay and mud bound with hair and chopped straw, packed layer over layer until the wall was airtight and the wind could no longer find its way through. They insulated the floor against the frozen ground and layered the roof with sod thick enough to hold the heat that always tries to rise and escape. But here is what we miss when we look at those walls today. All of that moss did not gather itself. In the fading light of late summer, the whole family would go out together to collect it, and this was no idle chore. It was a ritual, quiet and deliberate, a rite of survival performed year after year. The children learned to read the coming winter in the color of the leaves and the dampness of the moss between their fingers, learning without being told that the warmth of the January nights ahead was being decided right now, in August, by their own small hands. That insulation was more than material stuffed in a wall. It was a family's memory, packed tight and sealed inside the very bones of the house. And so the fire was burning, the walls were sealed, and the heat was held. By every measure, that family should have been safe. But the cold is patient, and it had one more way in, one that no wall could ever stop. Because even in a warm cabin, the human body itself can quietly begin to betray you. In the back corner of the cabin, the Hale children slept in a single shared bed, and tucked close around their small bodies were smooth river stones, heated in the fire's edge until they were almost too hot to hold, then wrapped in thick wool and slipped beneath the blankets. All night, those stones would give off their warmth, mingling with the heat of the children themselves, so that even as the fire burned low, the little ones slept inside a pocket of warmth of their own making. Because the frontier family understood something we've mostly forgotten. That heating the cabin was only half the battle. The other half was the body itself, and they managed it like a fire of its own. They dressed in layers, deliberately. Linen or soft wool against the skin, heavier wool over that, then an outer garment on top. Each layer trapping a thin cushion of still air. And it was that trapped air, more than the cloth, that held the warmth against them. Wool was treasured above all, because wool alone kept its warmth, even when damp with sweat or snow. A property that could mean the difference between discomfort and death. The heated stones held their warmth for 6, even 8 hours, carrying a child gently through to morning. But the deepest warmth of all came not from stone or wool. It came from each other. The whole family slept together, bodies pressed close beneath piled quilts and furs, and the children were placed in the middle, cradled between the larger, warmer bodies of the adults, where the heat was greatest and the cold could not reach. Because out here, warmth was not private. It was shared or it was lost. Before sleep, there was hot food and hot drink to stoke the fire within, raising the body's core heat from the inside. And when the chill still crept in, a rubbing of the hands, a warm breath cupped over cold fingers to drive the frost back. And when you sit with it long enough, you begin to see the truth beneath the technique. In the killing cold, survival was never a thing a person did alone. It was something a family did together, in the most literal way imaginable, keeping one another alive with nothing more than the heat of their own bodies pressed close in the dark. The human body is the best heater ever made, but only when it lies beside another body. And yet, all of it, the stones, the wool, the shared warmth of a family curled together, all of it rested on a single, silent assumption, that the fire was still burning. So what happened on the night it wasn't? 3 a.m, Thomas Hale woke, and something was wrong. No glow, no warmth. He breathed out into the dark and saw his own breath hang there, pale and ghost-like, inside his own home. The fire was dead. Outside, the cold had deepened to 40 below, and it was already reaching through the walls, feeling for his sleeping children. He has maybe 30 minutes, not longer. 30 minutes before the cabin turns from shelter into a tomb. And this is the moment that separates the family that greets the dawn from the family found frozen 2 miles away. But Hale did not panic, because Hale had already lived this night 100 times in his mind. His hands moved before his thoughts caught up. By the hearth, always within reach, waited his emergency kindling. Curls of dry birch bark, a tin of char cloth that would catch a single spark and hold it. He knew the enemy by name and watched for its first whispers, the uncontrollable shivering, then the strange confusion, then the clumsy hands that no longer obey. If the cold took one of them before the fire caught, he knew what to do. Strip away the cold clothing, press skin against warm skin, wrap them together in furs. Arrange the whole family in a tight ring with the smallest and the oldest sheltered in the center and the strongest bodies on the outside. A wall of living warmth. If he had to, he would hang blankets around the hearth and build a smaller room within the room, a tent of warmth around the last of the coals. And now, at last, we can answer the question we began with. Why did one family live and one die, just 2 miles apart, under the same sky? It was not more wood. It was not better walls. It was this. The family that survived had rehearsed the moment the fire went out, long before it ever did. They had practiced the panic away until nothing was left but motion. Survival, it turns out, was never a single act of courage in the dark. It was a memory of preparation, waiting quietly for the night it would be needed. And that is why this still matters, right now, to you and me. Because when the next great storm brings down the power lines and the furnace falls silent and the house begins to cool, these very principles, heat, insulation, the warmth of bodies close together, and a plan rehearsed before the crisis, are the same ones that will carry a family through. Our ancestors were not stronger than we are. They were not braver. They were only paying closer attention. The cold has not changed at all in all these years. The only thing that has faded is human memory. So stay warm, stay ready, and remember what the cold taught them. I'm Sam, and this has been Wild America.